So in support of Women's History Month, this has been something that I have noodled on for probably the past several years, since I've really been in tech. So I'd say probably the last 10 years of my career, all the different ways in which I wound up becoming a leader in marketing in AI. Because if you would have looked at my background, if you go to my LinkedIn right now, there is nothing that says that's what she's going to be when she grows up. Everything from my college career to where I was born to what my parents did, which sometimes gives you historical context on what you potentially will do. Nothing said she's going to be a technologist. In fact, most of my friends make fun of me because I can barely update my iPhone by myself. So when it comes to hardware, I'm not your girl. But it turns out that when it comes to software and complex topics, being able to translate those into business messages, I really found my sweet spot. So in that spirit, because there was no, hey, Paula, do you want to be head of marketing in AI when you grow up? When I was picking out my college curriculum, it's always been important to me to find a way to give back. And the audience that we've invited today is not just partners, not just peers, not just prospects. We have high school students, college students, all who will get the recording of this if they're not able to make it this afternoon, this morning, and all who have shown interest in understanding and learning about what the future of work looks like. The other part of my vision that I really wanted to come to life was have representation not only by diverse careers. So this isn't a week of women in tech, although today you happen to tune in for the tech talk. But all week we have several different types of entrepreneurs, leaders, nonprofit founders, just an array of humans that have just made it to the top in different ways. It was also equally important for me to find representation across multiple time zones. So today, all the way from India, we've got Aarti, and all the way from LA, Los Angeles, we've got Randi. So today actually depicts quite beautifully my two polarities on the time zones that I was hoping to have here. Because I think that once you begin to hear their stories, you'll realize that the thing that draws us together is more than just the space between, right? It's the stories that we share, it's the experiences that we've had, and the fact that all of us have a sense of responsibility to empower, to share, and to continue to promote the things that we've learned to women that are coming up the ranks behind us, right? And so I feel that I've been fortunate to somehow develop a platform, you know, over the course of this random marketing career that I found myself in, and you guys will hear more about my story tomorrow. But as I kind of navigated the waters and sort of found my spot, I realized that it was equally important for me to explain to people what the map looked like, because I didn't follow one, right? But I could certainly create one as I looked back on what it was that it took to get me there. So without further ado, we're going to kick this off with the stories from two powerful women who have done it totally differently, but have found their way to the top equally successfully. And I'm just so honored that you guys gave an hour of your time today to spend with us and to share your stories. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with Miss Randi. She's a leader and founder of Women in Tech Accelerator, and I'm not going to steal her thunder. I'm going to let her speak for herself, and then we'll follow it up with Aarti and have a few discussions. If you guys have questions throughout the course of this discussion, we encourage collaboration in the chat. Pretend this is a B2B Instagram Live, right? We're on LinkedIn, kind of Teams business forum, but go ahead and interact because we encourage that. And the conversations yesterday were just so fantastic. Some great questions came up. So Randi, I'll kick it over to you.
Hi, I'm Randi Levin, and Paula, I want to thank you for having me today. This is quite exciting to be here. I have been a CIO 4 times in my career, so I've had a long tenure in technology, and I will get to my current role soon, which is, as you mentioned, my company called the Women in Tech Accelerator, which is dedicated to escalating and rocketing up women up that corporate ladder. And it's not only important to me, but it's also a way of giving back to this field that I've been in for a long time. So my story, okay, I did not wake up and go to college and say I wanted to be in technology. It just didn't happen that way. I actually went to the University of Arizona on a music scholarship, and I played the French horn. And I really wanted to be in a symphony. And my freshman year, my horn professor sat me down and said, there are 5 major symphonies in the country. They take 4 French horns. How long do you want to live with your parents? And I went, and they didn't have cell phones then. So I ran back to my dorm and called my mother and said, I don't know what to do with my life now. I don't want to live with you forever. Um, so she has always been very progressive. And to this day, she may be on here listening. She's 84, but knows how to use her iPhone and do everything, that I've taught her on her computer. She said, I heard that computers are the up and coming thing. Why don't you take a class? Okay, I did. And then it was sort of like a duck to water. And I programmed in COBOL and Pascal and Fortran and all that stuff. And so it was great. Well, I got out of college and they made it sound like, everybody was waiting with the red carpet rolled out for new college graduates in computers. And that was not the case. So after sending out 200 resumes on paper those days, I finally got my first job, which was programming on the Apache helicopter, which to this day they're actually, unfortunately, still flying in Ukraine in the war there. But I had no idea that my first job would be in aerospace and defense. That was certainly not a thing that was even on my own radar. And since this really was the beginning of really where women and men were having careers in technology, there was no roadmap. There was nothing. And so, I was pretty much, one of very few women that were in that field. That company moved to Arizona, and I had just moved 2 years prior from Arizona. So I wanted to stay in the LA area, and I took my next job, which was at Korn Ferry International, programming on their applications to find jobs, the now modern day version of LinkedIn and Glassdoor and some of the others for positions and matching people. So it was fantastic. I took a tour of duty then and went to New York and got married. And I worked on Wall Street for a few years. And so you can see that my progression was not be in the same industry, or be in the same company. And everybody has their own journey to where they get to where they have, to where they are and where they're going. So I moved back to LA and there was no job for Wall Street here. So I decided that it might be really good to go into consulting and learn how to be a management consultant. I spent 5 years at Price Waterhouse before there was Price Waterhouse Coopers, and learned how to do strategic IT planning for major organizations. And I really felt that that was a skill set that really augmented all of my technology expertise. And it's hard to develop that sometimes when you're in-house in an IT organization. And it still is true today. And so after 5 years of that and having my son, I decided I didn't want to travel, which I was doing. And I took my next position, which was at LA Gear, the sneaker company. Remember they had light up sneakers a long time ago? So it was marketed as a turnaround, but it never turned around. So I was there for 2 years, and then I went to the Walt Disney Company, where I started, somehow along the way, I started implementing ERP systems. I think the first one was at LA Gear and Oracle. And to this day now, I've implemented 17 ERP systems, which again was not a career objective. But what I want to pass on, and before I continue, is for each job, what I try to do is take what I learned and then apply it to the next place. Learn as much as I can in my current organization, about the business, about technology, take every opportunity, learn from the people, that are there, and then take that to your next role. And I would pass on that advice to any of you that are listening today, because I think it's really important. So I went along the way. I then spent 8 years at, it was Universal, then it became Vivendi Universal, then it was NBC Universal, and, went through all of this. So it was pretty crazy. But I then put in SAP all over the world, and I did it in 15 countries with the first SAP implementation in Russia, which involved vodka. So it was very important to figure out how to do this project and do it successfully, on time and on budget. I took my next CIO role, which was very large, for the city of Los Angeles. And that was, a big, big leap. And again, no career roadmap. I had really no mentors here. Well, another thing that I would pass along, and maybe we're going to talk about this at the end, but if there's no mentors in your company, adopt one. Say, will you mentor me? Or will you give me some guidance? Most people are willing to do that, no matter if they're a man or a woman. So take that opportunity to do that. So anyway, I spent 5 years at the City of LA, and my most notable accomplishment there was to put in Gmail, which was the first SaaS-based email system anywhere in the world for a major organization. And some other time, when Paula does this for another time, I will tell the whole story of how that actually occurred, because it was so much less about the technology and so much more about so many other things that I hadn't anticipated. Well, I spent the next 10, 15 years of my career, I went back into consulting. Then because I wanted to do some other things, and then I went back to become CIO of Cast and Crew, which was an entertainment payroll company. And then most recently, my last corporate job was being the CIO of NASA JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab. And the biggest thing I did that you probably all know was then, I was in charge of all the underlying technology to land on Mars. And that was during the pandemic, while everybody was home. You saw maybe 30 or 40 people on TV. And, we had another 2,000 or 3,000 at home that was doing this landing live. And I will add to that, I had COVID myself, and this was before the vaccine, and I was very sick. So I feel like if I could do that, I could do anything. So, that it definitely made me the Wonder Woman of that time, because it was monumental. Had I woken up one day and said, I'm going to be the CIO of NASA JPL? No. I always had wanted to work in space, and the opportunity arose. And so then I took it. So 2 years ago, I decided that I really wanted to launch my own business. I've always been very, very passionate about women in tech. And I really never had any women in tech mentors in my entire career. I adopted a few men, but I do not believe that there were any women mentors that I had throughout my career. And part of my thing is wanting to give back, and not having you guys that are, either entry level or mid-career going through some of the same things that I've gone through in my career. So what I've done is I've developed a program. I have now a few of them within my business for educating, mentoring, teaching, launching, helping, supporting women in either a 90-day program or a week-long program that I do in cohorts. I launched it with a B2B model for companies, and now I'm opening it up to a B2C model for individual women. Either their company will pay for it or they can pay themselves. And the feedback that I have gotten has just been tremendous. I would say that the mid-career women who I've targeted primarily, which is not always the case, but have really found all of this very, very valuable. And they said, I wish I had had this at the beginning of my career and not now in the mid-career. I'm also working for the White House. I am a technology advisor on a major digital transformation effort in the Executive Office of the President. And again, if you would have told me would I be doing that in my career, I would have said, absolutely not, absolutely not. And just a few other things that I'll add, and then I'll turn it back to you, Paula. I am a mom. I have 2 children, a boy and a girl. They're not a boy and a girl anymore. They're a man and a woman. They're both terrific. One followed in the field of technology. He is a data scientist at Meta, a senior data scientist at Meta, and the other one is not in IT at all. Was an accountant, decided through the pandemic she really wanted to help people, and is getting a degree in school psychology now, which I think is very admirable. So my career was not a straight line. It wasn't guided by any mentors. And it was really just sort of figure it out on your own. And I really think that women need much more support and guidance and advice and somebody to talk to, because it's primarily still a man's world, unfortunately. But there is hope, because we have forums like this, we have businesses like mine, we have women like all of us that are trying to elevate these women, all of you guys and everybody else that's out there. So, Paula, thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks so much, Randi. What a beautiful introduction. And I love how nonchalantly she just casually drops that she's working on a digital transformation for the White House and low-key first install of Gmail as an application. I think the other thing that I've learned over the course of the last 2 days is that one of the things that makes us people who folks try to emulate or ask questions of or seek as mentors is an intrinsic humility that comes with knowing that you didn't get there easily, right? And so you can hear that in your story, in the anecdotes that you tell, and how effortless it is for you to just explain, these stories with such humility, Randi. And I think that's so important for all of us. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask Miss Aarti to join me on the spotlight. I think Ria does that. I'm not sure. I'm still learning this forum, guys. And there she is. All right, fantastic. So I'll go ahead and kick it over to Aarti. I was introduced to her as part of looking for a fantastic female representation in our beloved India. I was able to go to your country for the first time this year, and I still kind of get emotional when I think about it, because it was just such a beautiful experience. So I love that we're able to bring so many different stories. We go from the president's office at the White House all the way to Pune. So Aarti, go ahead and share your story. Tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you got into this AI career, because it's just so fascinating, the twists and turns that you've taken and the organizations that you've worked for.
Definitely, sure. Thank you so much, Paula, for having me here. Like I said, super excited to be part of this event, and very honored to be sharing the stage with all of those super women, Randi, Rebecca, and all of the other super women who will be joining in later this week. So, and I really love this, the contrast we have on the location. Randi from US and me from Pune, so amazing. Coming to my career, so yes, my career also hasn't been a straight line. Although I started off with a very traditional role, like I did my software engineering, and like any other college graduate, I started looking for roles as a software developer to the start of my career. And that's an interesting story as well. Due to some reasons, I was not able to attend campus interviews. And then I was on my own to go out and look out for jobs. And back then, we were not so advanced as to put up your projects on some site, some Kaggle, and then, showcase them to your prospective employers. We just have a resume and we went out and applied. And the job market was such that people were not hiring freshers at that time. So I was not getting hired. I was not getting calls. One fine day, I did get a call and I was super excited. Yes, now I'm going to go and crack that interview. I was super confident. I did very well on that interview, I thought. And because I was a fresher, I did not have a lot to showcase, but I had good grades and everything. So I thought I did well. And towards the end of the interview, the coordinator came back and said, hey, thank you for your time, but we are not hiring freshers at this point. So maybe, you can get in touch with us later. And I was like, okay, but you knew this when I applied. And I was a little disappointed and walked out. And I was thinking to myself as to, what should be done. And then something clicked and I went back to the office and I asked the coordinator, hey, can I have 5 minutes with the interviewer? And she was like, okay, do you have a question? I said, yeah, I do have a question and I forgot to ask. So I went back and I asked the interviewer, I understand you're not hiring freshers. Do you have a feedback for me? Like, what can be done for me to, crack this interview better? And he was like, no, I think it was all good, but it's the only The only limitation was that our clients are right now not hiring, like we are not hiring freshers. So that's the only criteria. And then I said, but then if I don't get an experience, how will I be hired? Like, if I don't have experience, I will not be hired, and you won't hire me if I don't have experience. So it's a deadlock situation, right? How do we solve this? And he was taken a little aback, like this coming from a college graduate and this question coming on. So he was like, okay, um, let's see. So what do you want me to do? So I said, I can intern for a few months. I'm ready to take a little bit of, change in the compensation. Do you think you can do that? And the person seemed to be impressed. He said, can you do some UI stuff, HTML, documentation, all of this for a few months, and then we'll see how you move to programming. I said, yes, works, of course. And that's how I got into that first job. And later on, I moved ahead and continued there. The reason for sharing the story is like, most of the times we do not ask those questions. We just feel that, hey, this is how the system works. This is the requirement of the job. And so nothing can be done. But most of the times, if you ask for that help, people are ready to go out of their way and do something if they see that passion in you, if they see that you're willing to put in some work, right? So that was the story about my first job. I then moved forward and did a lot of programming. And then after spending few years on to code, I started feeling that, okay, coding is good, I'm enjoying, but I really want to look at the big picture, right? How are those accounts managed? Like, what are who prioritizes them? What are the financials? How are programs managed? How do they interact with each other? And I was really interested in this. And uh, typically, programmers do not get access to this information unless they reach a certain level, like a management level, senior management level. But I was really wanting to know that. And at the same time, an opportunity came up in the program management office in the same organization. And I had a chat with the lead, and they said, you can join in and you can bring in your technology experience to help us out. I was like, great, this is a good opportunity. And I decided to join the program management office. Uh, this decision was frowned upon by some of my technology friends, peers, leads, and they were like, hey, I don't think that's a good move because you will lose touch with technology and then you might end up becoming a admin or something. So I said, I'm very passionate about this opportunity, these topics, and I really want to give it a try. And worst case, if it doesn't work, I can always try back. So, but that turned out to be a turning point in my life. I learned a lot in my program management office role. I understood business in and out. I understood how profitability works. I understood how clients are managed, stakeholders are managed, what are the risks at a very, very early age. And I used technology extensively to bring in efficiencies into the program management office. So I was never out of touch with technology. In fact, there are a lot of processes in the PMO office which are done manually, resource management and so on, which I use technology to automate them. Like I had automated a bunch of stuff over there. And that is how I landed into the world of bots. So starting with traditional VBA and workflow automation, I landed onto RPA, which is robotic process automation. And yeah, that's how my transition into the space of bots. And then the following few years, I did a lot of automation for various businesses, from HR to payroll to finance to order management and all of those business units. I did take up a lot of trainings as well, because while I was setting up this team for automation, I realized that I have a flair to explain people, to explain technology and build that bridge between business and technology. So I did take up a lot of trainings. I am a certified design thinking coach. So all of that was working quite well. And then I took up a role as COE lead at one of very big organizations in RPA, and did pretty well there. Like in past few years, while process automation moved from RPA to cognitive automation to intelligent automation, right? That is where my journey with AI started. I started exploring what AI is, how it can be leveraged, how intelligent automation can benefit out of it. And I was like traveling across the world, showing my clients what AI can do, what Gen AI can do. I was winning hackathons. Like my career trajectory was on a roll. And that is where um, that one bomb sort of fell on us in the form of an acquisition. So my organization was getting acquired, which meant that my team will not be there anymore, and I will be laid off in few months' time. That was a very difficult phase, I would say. Like when you are at the top of your career, you're doing so well, and then one day you realize that, okay, how can that happen to me? And I really wanted to share this story on this platform because today we see a lot of layoffs happening, right? And I really want to bring this up, my learnings about this situation and how to navigate. So I took some time to assimilate this information, to process what has happened. And I had then two choices, right? Sulk about it, look for roles which are similar to my role, and then move ahead. But this was also an opportunity for me to do something different, right? And that is where I kind of realized that hey, all of those years I have gained knowledge from different areas. I know how businesses work. I know how technology works. I know how AI works. What can I do to put all of this together and have a fulfilling career? And that is where the opportunity to work with the AI startup came in, and I just jumped on. So yes, I have taken decisions which were, sometimes not agreed by people, sometimes supported by people, but I feel they have turned out very well for me. So yes, that is my story in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Aarti. And I think that's so amazing. Yesterday, we had one of our speakers also share that she had experienced a layoff. And I think it's kind of like one of those things that just doesn't get talked about. There's so much shame involved in it because regardless of what the company's reasoning is, or the macroeconomics that might be at play, the different areas that it is, and I experienced a layoff too at BlackBerry, and there was so much self-worth tied to my job that I couldn't unravel what is Paula going to be without BlackBerry, and oh my God, what a failure, and oh my God, how am I going to call my parents, and and what am I going to do? So I love that you shared that. And again, I think there's this thread of humility that continues to be woven in all the stories that we hear here, because I really think that that's the most important part. And women who are willing to raise their hand to give back and to share and speak on a forum like this, it's because they've taken a knock and they recognize that they wish somebody might have lent a hand sooner in their career or had something to say. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Randi to join the spotlight again. We have a few questions that made it to the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and drop one of them now. And then we have a few questions that came in advance of the meeting as well. So the first one that was directed to you, Randi, was what advice do you have for people who want to join a new industry? It seems like probably from your story, they gathered that you've jumped from several different areas. So how do you think that through? What is kind of the process that you go through to take the next leap? Tell us a little bit about that and what you did, for example, how you chose computers.
Well, from an industry perspective, technology isn't radically different from industry to industry. And, it's interesting because right now what I see is a lot of these job postings will ask for people in a specific industry. And I think that is myopic because I believe that, pretty much everybody is using Teams now, and no matter what company you're in, and all of those kind of things. So there is a lot of technology that is ubiquitous. From an industry perspective, I say, you know what, if you can learn one industry, you can learn another. You're not there to be the subject matter expert on how to build the widget. You're there to figure out and enable the business, because your role isn't to be the widget builder. your role is to figure out how you can enable the business to produce better widgets that are bigger, faster, cheaper, and get them out and market them and all of that. So I say, take whatever opportunity you have and learn as much as you can. Partner with people in your business so you can learn. I read every day. You don't have to read a novel every day. You can read headlines. You can read the first few paragraphs just to find out what's going on in the world. So, those are some of the things that I would say. And you know what, don't get discouraged if you're applying for a job and it says, you have to be in the financial services industry. Well, you know what? Financial services, I think everybody uses money, So I think it's transferable. And so there's ways to craft your story where you can take your experience and then say how you would apply it in a different industry.
No, I think that's brilliantly said, Randi. And I think the only thing I'll add to that too, from my experience of jumping from data centers, law firms, M&A printers to technology, is that the common thread throughout it was the skill set that I possessed, right? So Paula was always very good at translating complex concepts, period. So insert legal here, insert AI, insert technology. That's what I was good at. So every time I was looking to shift something, I would look inward to my core and say, what is it that I'm good at, right? And it's by no, real surprise that I wound up being a marketer, and I tell stories every day, right? That's what we do, is we tell stories about what the company does. And then of course I use that skill, and that gift really, because I feel honored to have been blessed with that, to do things like this, and to help other people tell their stories, because I think that it's the collective unison of stories that gives us these ideas to get creative and move on into different areas of the workforce. So Aarti, I wanted to turn to you real quick and ask as well, because you are one of the most linear ones. You did engineering and you're going and forging that path straight on, head on, and taking the bull by the horns. So when it comes to being in that area, how do you prioritize learning? Since you have so much to choose from, how do you think through what it is that you need to learn next, and how you continue to develop yourself? Because within your industry, it's wide and vast. For those who know it, which we do, of course, at WonderBotz, but it's very wide and vast. So regardless of the fact that you picked a niche, stuck with it, and plowed through it with like a complete boss, right? How is it that you prioritize learning so that you continue to stay at the top and be elevated in your game?
Right. So I think I have always believed in learning by doing. So whenever there is a new technology coming up, be it RPA, for example, when I was doing automations, I did not know there was something called RPA, right? But then when you're solving problems for your clients, internal, external, whoever, I think it is the best idea to first look out for existing solutions. Like, is there anything out there which is solving the same problem? And then if there is a new technology, new area to explore, to learn, the best way to learn them is by doing. So I think it helped for my team, for me to create that innovation mindset within my team. And this comes back, Paula, to your comment yesterday that we are the makeup of what our team is, right? So I have always tried to do that, give that, empower your team to try out new things, fail fast, and then, learn through doing. So and the second thing that I have, again, I agree with Randi, is you have to read a lot if you really want to be on top of technology. And with AI, I am sure all of you would agree, in the past 2 years, it has been exploding. Like yesterday, it is something else. Today, you will see a new algorithm coming in. Tomorrow, you'll see new regulations coming in. So you have to keep reading and keep doing. I think that's the advice I would give.
That's amazing advice. I think that's so brilliant. And I think knowledge is power. It always has been. It still is, right? And I think now that we have so much accessibility to information, we're getting less and less inclined as a population to, learn and to get those, meaningful nuggets that are just so readily accessible to us. Randi, there was another question that got lobbed your way. So your journey from deputy CIO at NASA in such a short span of time, how did you manage the learning part, but still being awesome while you were learning and executing at the same time? So how do you balance that? You know, perhaps some people call it imposter syndrome as you're kind of figuring it out as you go, but how did you balance the understanding of learning and executing simultaneously?
Um, you know, I really wanted to spend some time with our missions and understanding how they did what they did or what they do. And so I would prioritize during my day, either having lunch with an engineer or, you know, going to a meeting to hear how they do their process um, in and around the work that I was doing. So I think, you know, no one is going to tell you what to do. You have to just instinctively figure it out for yourself. I always say in my course, you have to be the CEO of yourself, you know, and so what do you really need to learn to be successful? I needed to learn how they built missions, and I needed to learn how they operated missions once they were in space. And so I would spend time with these, you know, various people that I would meet, or I would talk to people who would say, you need to talk to these other people, you know, and just doing it that way. I watched some videos, you know, things like that too, but it is a balancing act because there is so much work that needs to get done. And I really jumped right in on the things that I could actually contribute to without really knowing that whole piece right away. But even, you know, learning from my own staff, some of them had been there a very long time, and they had a lot to teach me about how we would do mission landings, which, you know, I didn't really have on my resume before. You know, it wasn't front and center there. And so, you know, the team really came together, educated me, and then we figured out how we could do this. And for us, it was in a virtual world, you know, well, we had people sick and the whole business. So I'd say you have to prioritize it, and you have to do it all the time. You can't just say, okay, today I'm going to spend 1 hour talking to people in the business. You know, that's not going to get you where you need to be. So if you really want to make a dent, you have to prioritize it.
Absolutely. And I think you know, for us to be the best version of ourselves, the competitor is who Paula was yesterday, who Randi was yesterday, who Aarti was yesterday, right? And I think that's another important thing to recognize is that you have to be in tune with your limitations, because if it's too much to handle, you need to be able to talk to somebody or ask for help. The thing that I want to make sure and stress too, and it'll lead into this other question that I have here for you guys. You mentioned balance, right? And we talked about that a little bit yesterday as well. It's so important for me to prioritize my health, for example. I've had several health scares throughout the course of my career, and nobody would know it because I go on camera with my smile and everything's fine and hello, 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 right? But there's days where I have to reach out to my lieutenant and say, I'm not feeling it today. I need a down day. And she actually instituted for me, Miss Amanda, thank you so much. This year, I now have these breaks that are built into my schedule to stop, eat, have a cup of tea, and make sure that I'm being, you know, I'm nourishing myself and I'm taking care of Paula, right? And so I think that's another thing to remember is that, you know, being a Wonder Woman doesn't mean that you do all things all the time, say yes to everything and don't ever stop. It means that you've understood what Randi just mentioned, which is the prioritization of what's important to you, what's important to be excellent for your company, and make sure that you're not letting down your team or your bosses, you know, along the way. Or if you're an entrepreneur, do that so that you're your own boss, right? And so I think it's really important to stress that message, because I think a lot of times, you know, when we think of Wonder Woman, we think doesn't stop, doesn't eat, doesn't take a break, you know, does the kids, does the house, does the husband, does all the things, right? And you know, let's break that paradigm. That's not the case, right? We're human. So one of the other questions that had come up, Randi, that when we were talking through is, you know, especially because you have this Tech Accelerator, so I think you have this unique lens of what it takes to prepare. So you mentioned that you need to have instinct. Well, what if somebody doesn't have instinct to necessarily know what's next? What would you advise those up and comers on where to seek advice, seek counsel? How do you ask for a mentor? I mean, very practically, why don't you share with us just very tactically, what do you do? Do you just say, hey, will you be my mentor? Tell us a little bit about where you get those answers if it doesn't feel like it's coming to you naturally.
If you're in a company, some of them have formal mentorship programs, and there's pros and cons to them. There's pros to having a mentor in your company, and there's cons to having a mentor in your company. And so you just have to figure out, with the formal or even the informal, is that person really going to be helpful to you in your career? And you have to just seek that out and have a meeting, find out what their advice is, and then based on what their advice is, it may be great. You say, you know what, can I meet with you again, in a month or 2 months, and then just get it on the calendar and do it that way, particularly if it's an informal program. Then there's mentors you can seek out. I mean, I've had a lot of people go onto my LinkedIn and they say, will you mentor me? And I prefer to do it in a cohort, but I will do it individually if people really would like to do that. But there are others, besides me that are out there that have professional mentorship and development. Mine's not just a mentorship, it's a development program to really enable and support women to get where they want to be in their tech career. So you just have to look, and you have to find people that are going to have your best interest at heart, and your radar women have instinct. I can't tell you, why that is. I'm not a scientist in this area, but women have instinct. And
you might be by the end of the year, given this career trajectory. It wouldn't surprise me if you added that.
So, go with it. Go with your gut. If you feel like this person is going to really be able to help you and they have your best interests at heart, and you like their advice, then continue meeting with them. And you know what? If you don't, seek out somebody else then. And you know what? Sometimes you need multiple points of view, I mean, depending on what if you're contemplating a next career move, you may talk to your significant other, you may talk to a coworker, you may talk to somebody not in your company about it, to get different points of view if you yourself are a bit unsure of, what the next move is. So you have to seek out these resources. It's unfortunate that, it's not just one place you go, but there are people out there that are willing to help.
And I think that's very actionable. I think if you follow somebody on LinkedIn, there's somebody that inspires you or somebody that thinks through, it doesn't hurt to ask. And I think just asking alone is a wonderful step in the direction because it implies that you're ready. In fact, there's a nutritionist that I follow and have for a long time, and she's speaking on Friday. So I was very fangirl and asked her, would you be interested in doing this? I know you're one of the only women in sports. She's a nutritionist for the NBA. I've followed her for a lot of the health advice that I've gotten over the last several years, and and she's coming, and I couldn't be more thrilled, right? And she's not a mentor per se, but she's somebody whose advice I seek. So you don't necessarily have to be in contact with people directly to get advice, right? There's TED Talks, there's YouTube, there's all kinds of places where you can get those learnings, and really get practical advice, because that's what content creators are doing today, is just putting out educational and informative information, right? So if you Google, it'll be there. If you chat GPT it, I'm sure it'll be there too. So Aarti, question for you. There's formal programs in large organizations, and then there's some, advantages to working for startups, that I've learned in the last several years. With your new challenge and your new, forge and charge that you've got over there, what are some of the challenges of having that traditional organization versus a startup? And what would you say about navigating that and finding your people and finding a mentor when the community is so much smaller?
Absolutely. So this change of, joining an AI startup, in fact, the change of joining a startup itself was a huge thing for me, right? I have always been in roles which were well-set roles in bigger organizations. You want to get something done, you just call a guy or a department and it's done, right? So I'm used to that kind of a work environment. And with startups, as you know, it's very, very different, right? I mean, you have to put on a lot of different hats, like you are a AI practice leader, sure, but you have to be a AI marketeer as well. And you might have to be a AI tech lead as well. And that's how it works, because with startups, resources are limited. However, I feel the work experience is, what is valuable. Typically, people seek out people to join startups where they have seen those leaders, contributing, performing well in their roles. They have gained a lot of knowledge while working in their day jobs, and then they are approached to join the startup, right? So I see that change wherein, with limited resources, you perform different roles. It's very intensive, I would say, but it's also very fulfilling because you now have a stake into everything. You can contribute to the strategy, you contribute to the vision, mission, profit, everything, right? You contribute to how you want to grow your team, how you want to groom them, and all of that. So it is very, very fulfilling. I'm enjoying it as of now. Coming to the AI startup, now again, this is a very, very different ball game, right? AI software development is completely different. It's a different mindset altogether. In traditional software development, these are the inputs, these are the outputs, this is the wireframe, this is how it's going to look like. With AI, you don't know whether it's going to work or not, right? And everything starts with data. And then data is sensitive, data has to be secured. People do not share. Once they shared, you have the responsibility to handle it properly, responsibly, securely. There are models which have different accuracies, and you don't know what they will give out. And then with softwares like ChatGPT coming up, everyone says, oh, this is very simple. AI, OpenAI can do it. You can do it too in like 2 weeks' time. And we're like, sure, let's work on a POC and then we'll come back to it. So there are very different expectations of clients from an AI company. And there is a huge learning curve, both for AI service providers as well as clients, right? Both of the sides have to learn what to expect from AI. And because of this explosion into AI space, this is going to be a journey, I would say. Like, although we have technology running so fast, we also have to have people, catch up with it, understand that mindset, and then work together to really make AI work for us. So yes, it's super exciting working for a startup, working for an AI startup, and I'm really looking forward to the coming year. I think the coming year is going to be super, super transformational for AI industry as a whole.
No, I think so too. And I think that that's fantastic. Had I worked, I think if my career was flipped and I had done the startup thing first, I think you're absolutely right. You sort of get a tour of an entire organization, right? Like what the finance leader has to think about, what ultimate HR, I mean, often you don't even start with HR, right? What that's ultimately going to do to build a culture, how you market, how you talk about the products that you're selling. And I started my career at very stoic multinational organizations, BlackBerry, ThyssenKrupp, like they've been dinosaurs since the beginning of time, right? R.R. Donnelley. And so some of these traditional companies, you did get pigeonholed. So for me to branch out and find my path to storytelling, was a little bit more challenging. So in today's day and age, with so many pop-up startups, happening, it is a really good place to start. They're hungry. They need to, probably pay less, which might be what an entry-level position would have, and be able to offer, but you'd be able to learn so much. And I can't stress the value that I've received from the last 2 organizations I've worked for, working directly for the CEO. There is something special about working for the brains behind the operation and being able to kind of understand, anticipate, and begin to predict, how it is that we move, what it is that we're trying to do, and then start shaping what I'm learning to align to that greater goal, right? So it's really cool that way. So I put it in the chat, guys. You have a few more minutes for questions. I have 2 more here that had been given to me. Ladies, this is for you both. So we'll each take a couple minutes on this one. What are some of the ways that you balance work and personal life? Do you guys have rules where I know some people that just shut down at 5 o'clock. I don't care what I'm doing. It's over. It's family time. Prioritize the ways that, it kind of goes in and out. I'd love to hear what your strategies are for making sure that you take care of business at home and business at work and keep those things separately. If you do, some people don't. So Randi, I'll start with you.
Well, when my kids were growing up, I really tried to leave every day at 5 so that I could be home and be a mom and do job number 2, because that's definitely a job. And then sometimes after they went to bed, I would go back and do what work I needed to do prior. Now, since they're grown, I've had to rethink my life and they're out of the house. So I create my own boundaries now. I end at a certain time. I try and take a walk for a half hour in the middle of the day if I can, or early in the morning. So I'm trying to prioritize my health, and well-being as well. Because you know what? Companies are just going to want you to work, period. And you have to set your own boundaries. They're not going to say, oh my God, you should all take an hour off because you all look tired. No, you're going to have to do that for yourself. So I always say, set your own boundaries.
That's a great one. All right, Aarti, how about you?
Yeah, I was anticipating this question because so many of my colleagues, my friends, ladies have come up to me asking this question. Because if you see my socials, like apart from LinkedIn, Insta, Facebook, I am a totally different person there. You'll see me dancing, you'll see me going trekking, doing so many things. And many of them feel that I have all that figured out, right? My life is like very easy. That's not the case. And when people come up to me asking, how do you manage, right? All this work and all of this together. I do have few tips for ladies, and especially in India, what I have seen is this drop, right, happens when you are a new mother or you have very young kids, right? That is where many ladies give up because they are always caught up in this guilt. Like when they are doing their job, they keep feeling that they are ignoring their kid. And when they are with their kids, they feel that they are not doing justice to their job. And at some point they give up, right? So I would say, plan this period out, like build a very strong support system around you. Um, enable, like talk to your partner about responsibilities, who will take care of what, take help, house help if you can afford, if you can actually have access to some, build a very strong support network with your friends, your relatives, pickups, drops, all of that, right? Have that help. And then once you have a strong support system, you have to prioritize quality over quantity. So if I'm, let's say, spending 1 hour with my daughter, I have to be there. It cannot be like laptop on one side, phone in one hand, and I'm just being there. That doesn't help. If that way I'm with her for 5 hours, it doesn't count, right? Because kids do understand that. They get that energy. So prioritize that quality over quantity, I would say. And last but not the least, coming back, Paula, to your point, prioritize. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you are dissatisfied, discontent from inside, it will show up in everything that you do, be it your kids, be it your job. So take time to nurture yourself, take time to, breathe, take a break. And once you are satisfied, happy, I feel definitely it will show up in whatever you do. So prioritize yourself. I think that those are the key. And in after all of this, also, let's say things don't work out, take that break. Give yourself that break. Don't be hard on yourself. In today's world, there are so many programs, returnship program. There are many organizations who train women to come back to the workforce. So it's not the end of the world. If after doing everything, you still feel that it's getting harder, take that break and then jump back.
That's amazing. And with these last 5 minutes, I think I'll boomerang right back to you with another question that was here in the chat is what is the key mantra to keep going, being self-motivated? You probably do have to meditate on that. And, overcome those moments of breakdown. So that was another question here. So how do you combat that, Aarti? How do you advise to combat against that and turn it into something positive rather than stewing on the negative or the impossibility syndrome?
Right. So this is another interesting question, and I see that we are quickly running out of time, yes. So I'll try to be brief. Wonder Woman, strong women doesn't mean that you don't have breakdowns, right? Yes, take that thought, be aware, acknowledge that you're feeling that, right? Cry if you want to. find a person where you can go and, discuss those things. So you have to have that acknowledgement that, yes, I'm feeling down. Yes, I'm not, everything is falling apart. Do that first, get that out of your system. Only when you do that will you be able to then pull your thoughts together and turn it into something that you want to work on. So I would say take some time, you know, discuss your feelings, your thoughts with somebody you trust. Be aware of your thoughts, and then after you are a little okay with your thoughts, after you're aware of what's going on, then start thinking on how can I turn this around. And for this, I think you have to have a strong network. Coming back to Paula's point, right? If you have a good tribe around you, which you have built over years, you will know whom to turn to. And if you don't, you can ping me anytime.
So sweet. Randi, any closing words to add to that sentiment?
Wow, Aarti, you said a lot of really great things. I mean, it takes a village, you know, it takes a village to get through your career. And usually as women, we have someone we're responsible for, whether it's a partner, whether it's kids, whether it's parents, it could be friends, animals. I mean, we take on that caretaking role.
Yeah.
And you always feel in some cases that you're not doing the best job in one or the other. And you got to cut yourself some slack. That's what I'm going to say, because the women's lib movement in the 60s wasn't about doing everything all day long with the cape. It was about equal rights. And somehow it's got contorted into we work 24/7 and can fly around the world in 5 seconds, and we can't. And so it's really making sure that you're being true to yourself, having your boundaries, having your tribe, and knowing when to say, what, I can't do this, and it's okay, and be okay with that. So it takes a while to get there, though, for some people to be able to do that.
No, I totally agree.